Let me be clear. The narcissist who once laughed behind your back, who walked away like your tears meant nothing, is now crying behind closed doors, screaming into the darkness and breaking down piece by piece. They're not just regretful, they're mentally and emotionally unraveling. And the irony? They thought you'd be the one falling apart. You see, when you were shattered and broken, they looked on with cold indifference. They fed off your pain. They felt powerful when you felt powerless. But now the tables have turned, and what you're not seeing behind their proud social media posts and fake smiles is a person coming undone. They are crying into pillows at night, having full-blown rage episodes behind locked doors, throwing things across rooms and whispering your name through gritted teeth. Why? Because your silence is louder than their manipulation. Your healing has become their undoing, and your peace, the very thing they tried to destroy, is suffocating them now. And here's the most chilling part. God is allowing it, not because he delights in their misery, but because he's a just God. When someone sows deception, betrayal, and emotional abuse, what do you think they'll reap? They're not just breaking down, they're reaping every seed they planted, and it's destroying them. They can't endure the fact that you rose above. What shakes them the most? What leaves them pacing the floor in the middle of the night, fists clenched, eyes burning, breath shallow, is not your absence, it's your elevation. It's not the fact that you left, it's the undeniable, radiant evidence that you healed. They always imagined you would fall apart without them. That was the silent expectation, one they never said out loud, but one they deeply believed. That after all the emotional abuse, the gaslighting, the betrayal masked as affection, the passive-aggressive silence and the calculated control, you would be too broken to rise, too shattered to see clearly, too weak to move forward. They thought they had reduced you to someone who needed them. Even if you hated what they did, they thought they had trained you to believe that chaos was love, that their absence was punishment, that their return, whenever they decided to give it, would feel like mercy. But God had other plans. See, what they didn't realize, what their ego blinded them from understanding, is that pain does not always destroy. Sometimes it sanctifies. And what they meant for harm, God used for refinement. While they moved on quickly, parading false confidence and empty smiles, you collapsed before the throne of grace. You brought your broken heart, your bleeding spirit, and your crushed identity before the only one who could breathe life into dry bones. And God, in his mercy, rebuilt you in secret. You didn't rise because of revenge. You rose because of revelation. You realized that you had spent too long trying to get someone to see your worth who was committed to keeping you blind to it. You realized that begging for crumbs of love is never what God intended for a soul he created with such precision and glory. You realized that healing was not about getting an apology. It was about breaking the cycle of self-abandonment. And as you began to shed the identity they tried to stamp on you, something divine began to unfold. Your voice returned, clearer, stronger, unshakable. Your mind, once clouded by manipulation and confusion, began to sharpen under the light of truth. Your spirit, once heavy with false guilt and the weight of their projections, started to soar. And now, they don't recognize the woman you've become, because she no longer trembles when they go silent. She no longer panics when they pull away. She no longer questions if she's lovable based on their approval. She no longer needs them to choose her in order to believe she's worthy, and that terrifies them, because the power they once held over you was never love, it was control. Emotional dominance masquerading as affection. Their identity depended on you being small, on you staying stuck, on you looking up to them even when they were tearing you down. But you're not looking up anymore. You're walking forward. Your posture has changed. Your eyes no longer scan for their attention. Your heart no longer aches for their presence. You've made peace with the silence. You've found joy in the solitude. You've built a life, not just apart from them, but above their reach. And it's that altitude that burns them now, because in their universe, the idea that you could become better without them threatens their illusion of superiority. It pokes holes in the fantasy that they were the best thing that ever happened to you. It challenges the lie that you are nothing without their validation. You see, narcissists don't mourn the person, they mourn the control, the influence, the emotional access. And when they realize they can no longer penetrate your peace, they lose their grip, not just on you, but on the carefully constructed image of themselves. They wonder how you stopped caring, but it's not that you stopped caring. It's that you started caring about yourself more. You started listening to the voice of God over the voice of guilt. You started pursuing purpose over proving your worth. You started building, dreaming, living, not for their attention, but for God's glory. And the most dangerous thing to a narcissist is a person who no longer fears being alone. Because when you no longer fear being alone, you're no longer afraid to lose them. And when you're no longer afraid to lose them, you're no longer susceptible to their games. You've outgrown their reach, and they feel it like a weight pressing down on their chest. They sense it in the stillness that used to be filled with your pleading voice. They hear it in the absence of your reactions. They feel it every time they try to bait you and you don't bite. Every time they test the waters and you remain still. It's not indifference, it's deliverance. And that kind of deliverance doesn't come from self-help books or self-empowerment slogans. It comes from the presence of God, from the long nights of surrender, from the deep, soul-breaking groans that only the Holy Spirit could interpret, from the prayers that felt unanswered, but were actually being fulfilled in silence. That's what's got them unraveling, because they know they didn't set you free. They know they didn't inspire your healing. They know they weren't the reason you rose. God was. And now, their pride has to sit and watch what they never believed would happen, the one they underestimated, becoming untouchable. You are the living proof that no matter how dark the pit, God still resurrects. No matter how severe the wound, God still restores. And no matter how cruel the abandonment, God never leaves his children where the narcissist dropped them. They can't handle that, because they never expected you to become whole. But here you are, whole and holy, and out of reach forever. They're obsessing and watching you non-stop. They said they didn't care. They told everyone they had moved on. On the surface, they made it look easy. Quick smiles, casual photos, shallow conversations. But behind that mask, behind the silence and ego, is a storm they can no longer contain. They are obsessed with you, not in love, not in remorse, but in panic, in confusion, in deep, unrelenting torment. Because you, the one they were so sure would be watching them, are no longer watching. And that reversal of attention, that shift in power, is something they never prepared for. You were supposed to be the one staring at their profile. You were supposed to be the one refreshing their feed, wondering if they miss you, wondering if they've found someone new. But you didn't stay in that story. You broke the script. You walked away not only from the relationship, but from the addiction to chaos. Now they're the ones staring, clicking, refreshing. They wake up in the middle of the night, anxious and agitated, heart pounding, with thoughts they can't silence. Without fail, they reach for their phone. It's not to check the news. It's not to check the weather. It's to check you. Your social media, your photos, your stories. Anything that can give them a glimpse into the life they no longer have access to. And with every post, they fall deeper into the spiral. They see your glow, brighter than ever. They see your joy, unshaken, unforced, undisturbed. And the image of you smiling without them? It's unbearable, because it confirms what they were never supposed to face. You never needed them to begin with. All you ever needed was healing. And once you found it, they lost their grip on you forever. They're studying your face now like a puzzle they can't solve. Wondering if there's someone else. Wondering who's behind the camera. Wondering how you moved forward so effortlessly when they're still stuck in the cycle of pretense and rage. And every time they imagine you with someone else, their thoughts spin out of control. They picture you laughing in someone else's arms, sharing the love they once took for granted. And it fills them with something darker than sadness. It fills them with torment. Not because they love you, but because they can't own you anymore. That's what it's always been about. Possession, influence, control. They never nurtured your soul. They monitored it. They never protected your heart. They preyed on it. And now that you've taken your power back, silently, completely, unapologetically, they are left with the only thing they ever truly feared, irrelevance. And make no mistake, their obsession is not passive, it's not casual, it's spiritual. They are searching for cracks, openings, weaknesses, anything to reinsert themselves into your peace. But God has sealed the door. He's covered you in a grace so deep, so complete, that all their watching only leads to frustration. You've become untouchable, not because of pride, but because of protection. You've shifted realms. You've gone from emotional captivity to spiritual liberty. And the same person who once made you feel invisible is now haunted by the visibility of your freedom. They see you walking with strength. They see you living with purpose. They see you surrounded by light they can no longer dim. And it breaks them. They might never admit it. In fact, they'll deny it. They'll call you arrogant, cold, distant, even fake. But it's just projection. It's the reaction of someone who can't stand the mirror you now hold up to their dysfunction. Because your healing exposes their failure, your stability highlights their instability. And your silence? It's a thunderstorm in their conscience. You're not reacting anymore. You're not performing for their attention. You're not explaining, proving, or defending your worth. And for someone who thrived on your neediness, your clarity is a curse they can't shake. So let them watch. Let them circle your page 1,000 times. Let them wonder who you've become. Let them ache over what they lost. Because what they're looking at is not a woman trying to be seen. It's a daughter of God who is finally walking in her worth. You don't have to hide your light. You don't have to dim your joy. You don't have to shrink so they feel less inadequate. They broke you thinking you'd stay broken. But what they didn't know is that he who started a good work in you was faithful to complete it. And now they're witnessing the evidence of that promise. One post, one smile, one peaceful silence at a time. And here's the most powerful part. They can study your life, but they will never again be part of it. If this word resonated deep in your spirit, if you've seen with your own eyes how God turned the watcher into the one being watched, I want you to comment below. They're watching, but I'm walking with God. Because you weren't made to live in their prison. You were made to live in His purpose. And that's exactly what you're doing now. Your silence is heaven's punishment to them. They thought silence would be their weapon. They believed that withholding affection, ignoring your pain, refusing to give you clarity, that all of it would break you. They used the quiet as a form of control. To them it was strategic, cruel, and calculated. They thought the absence of words would hold more power than the presence of love. But now that the silence is coming from you, it's no longer a weapon, it's a judgment. Because this silence is different. It's not manipulative. It's not revenge. It's sacred. It's covered in the presence of God. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It doesn't explain. It simply exists. And that alone is shaking them more than any confrontation ever could. They never imagined that you would go quiet like this. Not the version of you they remember. The version who would have done anything for one more conversation, who used to plead for understanding, who cried when they left without saying goodbye. But that version no longer answers when they reach out. That version no longer flinches when their name is mentioned. That version no longer lives here. The silence that now surrounds you is not emptiness. It's peace. And for a narcissist who once fed on your reactions, your silence is starvation. They thrived on seeing you confused, unsteady, desperate for answers. Every time you reached out to ask why, every time you tried to make sense of the madness, it reaffirmed their sense of control. But now, there's nothing. No reaction, no response, no access. You're not ignoring them out of bitterness. You've simply been called higher. You've stepped into a space where God is speaking louder than your pain ever did, and where the stillness of His voice has replaced the noise of their manipulation. And the silence they now receive from you is not a wall, it's a boundary, not built from hate, but from healing. They can't stand it, because silence forces them to sit with themselves, and they hate being alone with the truth. When you don't respond, they're left with the echo of their own choices. They can't distract themselves with arguments. They can't twist your words if you never speak them. They can't rewrite the narrative if you've already walked off the page. You've become unavailable, not just physically, but spiritually. That connection they once misused is now protected by something holy. And they feel it, even if they don't understand it. They sense that your silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of consequence. Because heaven doesn't always speak through thunder. Sometimes it whispers through the quiet that follows betrayal. God saw everything they did behind your back, every lie spoken, every moment they pretended not to notice your tears, every time they discarded you like your heart wasn't handcrafted by the Almighty. And instead of calling you to fight back, God called you to step back, to withdraw, to go quiet, not out of weakness, but as a divine response to dishonor. Now, in your absence, they are confronted with the full weight of their actions, and while you rest in the arms of restoration, they are left pacing the prison of their own conscience, haunted not by your words, but by the fact that you no longer offer any. This silence is not passive, it's powerful. Because sometimes silence is the sound of God closing a door that no man can reopen. Sometimes it's the final answer in a conversation that never needed to happen. Sometimes it's mercy for the one who was broken and judgment for the one who broke them. And that's what they're facing now. They're replaying every moment they ignored you. Every time they dismissed your tears, thinking you'd always come back. Every time they underestimated your strength. And now, the silence that surrounds you speaks louder than their justifications ever could. You're not punishing them. You're protecting yourself. And in doing so, you're participating in something higher than human logic. You're aligning with divine justice. Because God doesn't always send storms. Sometimes He sends silence. And for the one who hurt you, that silence has become the loudest sound they've ever heard. You didn't need to shout. You didn't need to curse. You didn't even need to explain. Your silence did what your words never could. It drew the line. It said, enough. And heaven agreed. God is punishing them. You don't need to speak. You've said enough. You've cried enough. You've prayed enough. There was a time you believed justice would only come if you confronted them, explained everything, laid it all bare so they could finally understand the pain they caused. But now you know, some justice doesn't come through arguments. It comes through silence, timing, and the hand of Almighty God. You no longer need to fight to be heard. Heaven has taken your case. God saw everything they did. He saw the manipulation behind their smile. He saw how they gaslighted you, twisted your words, then stood back and called you crazy. He watched them build themselves up while tearing you down, making you feel like you were the problem for asking for honesty, for love, for consistency. And though you questioned at times whether God was paying attention, you now know. He wasn't just watching, He was recording. There is a kind of judgment that doesn't make headlines, doesn't cause public scenes, but it is unmistakable. It's quiet, strategic, righteous. It unfolds in a way that only God could orchestrate. It doesn't destroy all at once. Instead, it pulls back piece by piece, the false foundation someone built on pride, deceit, and control. And when it falls completely. You see, when someone harms a child of God with an unrepentant heart, when they take advantage of grace and mock the humility you offered, God doesn't stay silent forever. He allows a season of separation, a season where He works both in you and in them. For you, that season has become healing. For them, it has become unraveling. What you're seeing now is not coincidence. The emotional breakdowns, the anxiety, the restless nights, the sudden regrets, the rage that has no clear source. All of it is fruit from seeds they sowed in darkness. You didn't curse them. You didn't plot revenge. You simply let go. And in doing so, you made space for God to move. And He is moving. You may not witness every consequence, and you don't need to. Divine judgment doesn't need an audience. It only needs truth. And the truth is, they touched what was sacred. They mocked what was holy. They mishandled someone who loved them from a pure place. And that's something God takes personally. This isn't about punishment out of spite. It's about correction born of justice. The narcissist who walked away like nothing happened is now walking into a season where everything is falling apart, and they don't even know why. They can't see that it's not karma, it's God intervening. And the weight they feel pressing on their soul? That's not guilt. That's the presence of judgment. Not eternal damnation, but divine interruption. They can't manipulate their way out of this. They can't charm their way back in. They can't talk their way around the truth. What's unraveling in their life now is a direct reflection of what they tried to destroy in yours. What they dismissed in you, your heart, your loyalty, your prayers, is now haunting them in ways they never saw coming. They're replaying their decisions in the quiet, second-guessing their own logic, tormented by what-ifs and could-have-beens, and while you used to lie awake wondering what you did wrong, they're now the ones pacing, wondering how they lost someone God sent to bless them. This is the moment when God shows the difference between what's real and what's counterfeit. You were real. Your love was real. Your forgiveness was real. But they treated it like a game, and now that the game has ended, all that's left is the mirror, and the reflection of what they've become without you. You don't have to expose them. God already is. And the best part? You didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't have to scream, accuse, or demand justice. You just kept walking. You kept healing. You kept trusting. And in doing so, you moved out of their grasp and into God's covering. He is your defender now. And when God defends you, it's not about loud battles. It's about permanent reversals. The people who once thought they held your fate in their hands are now realizing they never had any power to begin with, because what they were holding was borrowed grace, and they spent it carelessly. So no, you don't need to speak. You don't need to convince them. You don't need to explain the tears they refused to see when they had the chance. God saw it all, and now He's answering in ways that silence can't ignore. You are moving toward a healthy, new relationship. There's a moment in every healing journey when something sacred shifts. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. It's when you realize you no longer miss the chaos. You no longer crave the apology. You no longer wait for them to change. The hold is gone. The fog has cleared. And for the first time in a long time, you can breathe in peace without guilt. That's the beginning of your new season. Not just a season of independence, but a season of divinely aligned companionship. A relationship that doesn't drain you, confuse you, or make you question your worth. A connection that doesn't begin in fear and end in silence. One that's not built on need, but on wholeness. Not on manipulation, but on mutual reverence. And whether you've already met this person or God is still preparing the moment, the shift is happening. Quietly, beautifully, deliberately. Because heaven doesn't just remove toxic people from your life. Heaven replaces what was broken with something whole. Not to reward you, but to restore you. Not to distract you, but to align you. Because you weren't made to live in survival mode forever. You weren't created to carry the memory of that dysfunction into every new relationship. God is too wise and too loving to leave you with ashes when He promised beauty. This new relationship will not look like the last. It will not come with confusion. It will not trigger your trauma. It will not replay the same cycle with a different face. No, this one is different. Because you are different. You've been refined. Not just matured, but spiritually deepened. You know the value of peace now. You've tasted the presence of God in your loneliness, and you've learned to love your own company. That kind of growth changes how you love, and more importantly, it changes what kind of love you'll accept. God is not just bringing you someone who is good on the surface. He is bringing someone who has been through their own fire, someone who knows how to handle a heart like yours, not with charm, but with honor. This person won't be intimidated by your strength or confused by your softness. They'll recognize both as sacred. They'll listen when you speak. They'll protect what matters to you. They'll pray with you, not just for you. And they'll never make you beg for the very things God created you to receive freely. Honesty, safety, commitment, truth. This is not a rebound. This is a reward that comes after obedience. Because while others ran toward distractions, you ran to God. While others numbed their pain, you faced yours with tears and worship. While others mocked your process, you stayed on the altar. And now, He's lifting you into a promise you didn't chase, but one that has always been yours. Don't let fear whisper that you're too damaged for this kind of love. Don't let the past tell you that all relationships end the same. Don't let the enemy resurrect the voice of the narcissist in your memory, trying to convince you that love must hurt to be real. Because God is not just a healer. He is a builder, and what He's building this time will last. You're not walking into another test. You're walking into a covenant, something mutual, something mature, something built on truth. And even if you're still alone right now, don't confuse silence with delay. What God is doing in the unseen is often more powerful than what we can observe. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the quiet. Not on dating apps, not in forced meetings, but in divine orchestration. Two people being prepared separately to meet at the intersection of God's timing. You are not being overlooked. You are being preserved, and the love that is coming, when it arrives, will not make you question if it's love. It will feel like peace, like home, like purpose. Because the pain you walked through didn't harden you, it clarified you. And now, you'll never again settle for a counterfeit version of connection. You'll recognize the real thing when it comes. You'll feel God's fingerprint all over it. And this time, you won't have to lose yourself to keep it. This time, love will not feel like sacrifice. It will feel like sacred alignment. And it's already on its way. You are the gift they never deserved. They thought they could handle you. They thought they had you figured out. In their mind, you were always going to be the one who loved too much, gave too much, stayed too long. They saw your gentleness as weakness, your forgiveness as naivety, and your loyalty as something to exploit. And for a while they were right. You did stay too long, you did pour out your soul. You did believe that love, real love, could change everything. But what they never realized is that you were not just another person passing through their life. You were a divine appointment, a sacred opportunity, a blessing from heaven wrapped in vulnerability. You were the one who prayed for them when no one else did. The one who saw the flicker of light beneath their darkness and believed it could grow. You looked past the manipulation, the pride, the masks, and tried to love the soul buried underneath. Not because you were blind, but because you were chosen. And sometimes the chosen are called to love the unlovable. Not to stay, but to witness. To be the presence of compassion in a space where cruelty had ruled for too long. But they mistook your presence for permanence. They thought you'd never walk away because you cared too deeply. What they didn't know, what they never even considered, is that God's daughters love with fire, yes, but they also leave with fire when the Spirit says, enough. You weren't sent to fix them. You were sent to reflect what they could have become if they had submitted to truth. But they didn't. They chose deception over honesty, image over intimacy, control over connection. And in doing so, they didn't just lose you, they lost access to a kind of love that doesn't come around twice. Now they sit with the weight of that loss. Maybe not outwardly, they'll still perform, they'll still pretend, but in the silence of their soul, when the masks are off and the noise fades, they know they had something rare, something real, something holy, and they mishandled it. They replay your laughter in their memory and realize it was the sound of peace. They reread old messages, hoping to find a trace of bitterness, a crack in your voice, something that proves they still matter. But all they find is grace, steady, quiet, final. You are the gift they never deserved, not because you're better than them, but because they refused to rise to the level of your love. They wanted to be worshipped, not healed. They wanted attention, not accountability. And when you stopped feeding their need to dominate, they called you the problem. But God has vindicated you. He didn't just remove you from the fire, He showed you that you were never the one burning. You were the light, and that light has moved on, into new places, toward people who know how to tend it gently, protect it carefully, and receive it gratefully. Your life is no longer tied to their shame. You don't carry their regret. You don't walk with their shadow. You walk in the light of the Lord now, and there is no greater closure than the favor of God on your future. You are not their warning, you are their consequence. And the beautiful truth? You don't even need them to know that. You don't need their recognition, their apology, or their praise. Because the same God who saw how they mishandled you is now the one who is elevating you beyond their reach. Let them talk, let them watch, let them sit in the echo of a love they thought would always be available. Because what they lost was not just a woman, it was a window into something real, something sacred, something anointed. They will never find it again. Not because God won't offer grace, but because they already received it and called it too much. And you are no longer standing at the door waiting to be chosen. You were chosen long before they even knew your name. You were set apart, and now you are free. So walk boldly, softly, Because the one who once broke you now knows what it feels like to lose the very thing they never had the heart to protect. You are the gift, and the gift has moved on.